We have David McGaw, November 1, Hotel Alpha Charlie of Dartmouth, who is going to talk to us about plans to observe changes to the ionosphere during the April 8th eclipse using Doppler shifts in AM broadcast stations. Excellent. Welcome.
Thank you, everyone. I'm David McGaw, N1HAC, Dartmouth College, also Vice President of Twin State Radio Club, so I like to put in a plug there. Twin States of New Hampshire and Vermont. I'll talk about our plans to observe the April 8th eclipse, but our project is actually much broader than that, but that's what's timely for today. Oh, I also wanted to thank Anton, who just spoke. He and his department up at University of Brunswick have been nice enough to cite 3 of our receivers for a different project. They happen to be up on Baffin Island, Kikicharjuak, Iqaluit, and one other site. They're conjugate magnetically to South Pole, where we also have equipment. We're looking for auroral emissions possibly happening at both poles at the same time. This system, what we call our AM Doppler system, is designed, traveling ionospheric disturbances, propagating variations in the ionosphere. We've found that they can be tracked by observing the Doppler shifted carriers of clear channel AM broadcast stations. We try to stick to clear channel to avoid identification difficulties using stations that are more regional and local. You saw that in Nick's talk. There are a lot of carriers in there, and difficult to discern what we're seeing. And even with clear channel, they're not as clear as we might like. We have set up a system of receivers using software-defined radio, frequency stabilized by GPS. We're hoping to deploy it at this point and collect data in the Northeast United States. It had been deployed. Our original system's been pulled out, and we're redeploying. The original system of 6 is being built out to 15 to cover much of the eastern U.S. And with this expanded network, we hope to be able to detect and track effects of the upcoming eclipse, as well as transient ionospheric disturbances, terminator effects, and spread F. This is our original system. Many have seen this before, but those who haven't, and I'll remind you what we've been doing. We had centered it around WGY, but using other carriers as well. WGY happens to be Syracuse, New York, home of Phil Erickson. Schenectady, sorry.
Wrong.
I know that. I knew you'd correct me if I... Anyway, we had a receiver at his place, his father's place, for ground wave, and then we had 5 stations spaced around. We use this kind of antenna. It's a small 2-turn loop, kind of similar to what used to be on the back of tube radios, larger than the little loop sticks they have in the radios today, with a preamplifier in the cylindrical case and a GPS antenna, which we use for the GPS disciplining. This is the receiver that we've developed. Very compact. The one on the top is, there's one extra component there off to the left. It's a cell modem, which most of our systems we like to have connected directly with Ethernet. but some of them we've used cell modems, sometimes we use Wi-Fi. But direct Ethernet connection is best. This is the receiver. We have a GPS-DO. It's a disciplined oscillator that comes out of the cell industry surplus, so they're fairly inexpensive. The only problem with that is revision control, and there are like 3 different types of this one supposed thing. They all talk a slightly different language, and we're having to update our software because the newer ones don't like to talk unless you speak to them first. We use an up converter into an RTL SDR. We use a local oscillator at 129.6 megahertz in the up converter, which brings it into the range of the RTL SDR. It only inherently goes down to 24 megahertz. You can do baseband sampling, but we don't use that feature. And then the RTL SDR uses a 28.8 megahertz clock frequency, which those are developed by the frequency synthesizer that you see down at the bottom. It's a little TI chip that I use to take 10 megahertz and convert it to those others. We bring it in through a power, a bias T from the preamp, put it through an attenuator, because very different locations have different RF environments. And we'll put in, some places I can have no attenuation. Some I have to have 12 dB attenuation, just because of all the carriers around. And one thing we have to be careful is, at night, it's a lot louder than during the day. And we're usually installing them during the day. So we have to check back. Has a DC-DC converter. It goes from 12 down to 5. Raspberry Pi is the heart of the system, and that guy is doing a lot of work. This is a block diagram where it comes in from the loop antenna through an attenuator, up converted into the SDR. Then the Raspberry Pi is actually taking the raw data, which is sampled 1 megahertz sample rate, 600 kilohertz to 1600 kilohertz range, and then it does a double FFT where it separates it into the 10 kilohertz channels, and then each one of those separates out a narrow band around it to get the carrier. Then that's uploaded to Maxwell, which is our server at Dartmouth, and then stored. This is the kind of data that we get reported back. The stations aren't marked on there, and in fact, we're going to be changing those from what we were doing in the Northeast area. This is the sort of thing that we get out of it. Raw data comes from the receiver. We use a tracking algorithm to try to find the shifted carrier. You'll notice down at the bottom here, correction for variation of 810 kilohertz carrier. That is WGY. It does not have a steady carrier. A lot of these stations don't. In fact, I think the bigger the station, the more varying their, probably the older their crystal system is. And we figure, you notice how the rate changes. It probably is just an on-off type of crystal temperature control, and it changes with ambient conditions. So because we're trying to get variations down below 1/10 of a hertz, that's 10 to the minus 7th off of a 1 megahertz carrier. We have to subtract that. That's why we try to get one receiver within the ground wave. Though some of them we've seen, you can get a pretty accurate idea of what the carrier is doing, even not ground wave. It may be off the E layer or something. But like up at Dartmouth, we're 100 miles away from Boston, but we can get the WBZ carrier with a straight, good accuracy, unshifted as well as shifted. So that's, here we analyze the data, we subtract the carrier variations, track the carrier center, and then we look at the different receivers stacked in time. And one thing that we've discovered, of course, is that you get a lot more resolution at the high frequencies than the low because Doppler shift is proportional. So we're trying to focus on the higher carriers for this next incarnation up in the 1500 kilohertz range. Unfortunately, the FCC puts most of the clear carriers down in the lower range. But that's what we do. Just to remind you, the path of the eclipse to our proposed system. And it's like, goes straight through it. I think some of the status that we have here is, unfortunately for today, a little not accurate. Those are the stations on the left that we're hoping to focus on, which spread out over this area. Some of these we actually have installed, saying that are active. Some are being installed. One is University of Illinois has been added. We found a good site there. That's being sent out to be installed. Detroit is thanks to Jay Schwartz. He's offered to host one of ours. And let's see, St. Louis is actually going at one of our students' homes where she's been working on this project. But we are actually still at this date looking for sites. Hope to have at least enough out so that we can see the effects. This is the principle, given the wide area that we're trying to cover, that we're looking at individual stations and then triads of receivers around each one, not looking to see all stations from all receivers. This is, I'm going to show you why it's kind of complicated. For the Eclipse, it isn't quite as perhaps, because during the day, these stations generally are allowed to transmit omnidirectionally. They're 50 kilowatt stations, but at night, they have strong patterns. And that's been an aggravating factor of finding suitable sites for the receivers, because you can see that there's some strong nulls in some of these. Now, of course, we're looking for Skywave, which may not have as strong a null as is indicated by the FCC's pattern. But in the west central area, you'll see that, like over in Missouri, it's kind of sitting in the nulls of a number of these stations that we're interested in. The northwest area up in the Minnesota, Wisconsin area, there's strong nulls away from our other stations. We were hoping to find one up, a receiving spot up in Upper Peninsula, but I think that's fallen through so far. Central area is, I should probably explain, these are a little complex, but there are two rings around each station. That's our first skip and second skip zones. And we're trying to get receiving stations within between the two rings, and we're not doing very well at that. And then you see the irregular patterns is the actual antenna pattern as The ones in Canada are interesting because they're pointing north. CBEF Windsor, I think, is pointing over to the northeast. But so I'm just trying. This is kind of what we're trying to deal with in citing this. Hopefully, we get enough systems out in the next 2 weeks. We unfortunately didn't get much data for the annular eclipse, but we weren't expecting to either, because there's very little, as has been pointed out already. The small amount of obscuration that we got in the east, in the northeast especially, didn't do too much to change the absorption. I saw it. We saw it in New Hampshire, but it was a little tiny, like 10% chunk taken out. And even we did have a receiver in Ohio. It's near Columbus, Marysville, operating, but couldn't identify something that was uniquely Eclipse. But hopefully with this next pass, with the strong totality, and we do get totality up in our region, very northern Vermont and New Hampshire. Hopefully we will see something. So I guess that's about the extent of what I've got to present today. Hopefully we have more to it. But as I say, this system is actually intended to be a long-term study, watching the transient ionosphere disturbances and whatnot. This has actually been a long-term sort of thing that we've been working on and other people have been working on. I'd been involved in the past with a project that was using ionosondes to do such up in northern Canada. But we'll see what we get, and more shall be revealed.
All right, thank you very much. Excellent, excellent.
And I just wanted to acknowledge all the people who have worked on this project over the years. Principal investigators, of course, Professor Jim LaBelle, Phil Erickson, and Shungrong Zhang have contributed science to it. Mike Trimpe, Juha Virnen, myself, Terry Kovacs, and John Griffin as software support. And then a long line of students. The current ones, Jackson Gosler recently left the group. Justin just dropped off, but Maggie Klein and Jack Bona are active with us currently.
Excellent.
Thank
All
you.
right. Okay. Thanks a lot.